The next major update to Don't Starve Together is out now, everyone. In beta form, that is. And it is nothing close to what we predicted just a few weeks back. Be that a good thing or not, I'm not entirely sure at this moment. But what I do know is that farming has changed forever. So, folks, if you're wondering how today's video is actually gonna go, expect more of a blitz through what's new over a complete breakdown, as Clay has even come out themselves and said that this update is due for plenty of further tweaks to its systems, mobs, character alterations, you name it. And I have a feeling that we're going to be discussing and even debating about this update for a while after today. Cause folks, farming has changed. Completely changed. Sure, while technically speaking, there are only but 4 new plants, all of which are actually weeds, the farm plots, and thus simple crops of old, are long gone, everyone. They've been replaced with the likes of asparagus ferns, carrot plants, corn stalks, dragon fruit vines, durian vines, eggplant stalks, garlic plants, onion plants, pepper plants, pomegranate branches, potato plants, pumpkin plants, tomaru plants, and watermelon plants. All with new looks, but quite frankly similar function actually. I see a lot of people already in the midst of debating just how involved the new systems behind these crops are. And you know what? They are right. It may not be as easy as just build a plot, plant the seed, and then wait any longer. But is it though? After today, I think many will soon come to discover that the new farming within Don't Starve Together is only as difficult as you choose to make it. And that at the end of the day, farming may have actually gotten easier because of the changes. But first things first, let's be sure to actually cover all the plants before we actually get to the nitty gritty. As we've got weeds, everyone. Lots of weeds. New plants called Forget Me Lots can sprout from random seeds, all the same as every single crop that I just listed prior actually, and if they are allowed to reach full growth and then spread further than that after another timer, they literally multiply themselves. And if completely forgotten about and left to ravage our new farm plots, well, I think you get the picture here. And these weeds will be a constant issue unless we root them out ASAP. And we can do so through a simple shoveling once we actually know it's weeds we're getting instead of a normal crop, of course. That said, if allowed to bloom on their own, forget-me-lots can produce forget-me-lots petals that will restore 0 hunger, 1 sanity, and a whopping 0 health each, yes. However, toss one into a crock pot with ice and honey for what is seemingly the only new crock pot recipe in the game, soothing tea. Enjoy 0 hunger, 15 sanity, 3 health, a temporary temperature drop, but also a sanity over time restoration effect that will return roughly 30 points of it. Not bad. Now, what is bad are fire nettles, everyone. Another possible weed that when approached by anyone who isn't wormwood will not only damage them for about 6 to 7 health, the prick is so hot that it will easily raise our temperatures to beyond overheating temperatures over time, so be very careful around them. They are definitely the weed that will cause the most issue, I think, so weed them out quick. Oh, and I wouldn't really concern yourself with the fire nettle fronds that they produce, as I don't really think they do anything as of yet, apart from the stat decreases that you see here. Now, another type of weed is that of the Spiny Bindweed, a seemingly rare type, at least in my experience, but if anyone has the specifics, then let us know. And like the other weeds, a spiny bindweed, left alone, can and will spread. But if we have waited to dig them up once they're actually fully sprouted, then we might be in for a surprise, as spiny bindweed will look to trap us in bramble, and it will damage us by 10 per attack if we aren't using God mode like a scrub like me. So watch yourself out there, farmers. But if you're wormwood, don't worry about it. However, the last type of weed is the Tillweed. Definitely the one that eluded me the most in all my testing. It is a weed, so expect spreading and the like, but the tillweeds that they provide could actually lead to some interesting prospects here. For you see, we can toss them together with some normal flower petals and charcoal for a new survival craft called Tillweed Salve. We can use these salves to initially heal for 8 health instantly, although a small and short health regeneration effect will then kick in following that. And it appears to be 1 health every 3 seconds or so, which ain't too shabby. Just more difficult, of course, to work towards than other healing options. But you know what's no longer difficult to work towards? Farm plots. At least multiple of the suckers. For you see, everyone, there are no farm plots anymore. Instead, a new structure of sorts, called a garden rigamajig, is now our ticket to plowing even bigger farm plots. Craft one, place it down in a location of your choosing, wait a few seconds, and the rigamajig will transform about a 1 pitchfork tile sized area that is essentially our farmland now. Well, for characters who aren't wormwood, mind you. But this is cheap. Very cheap. But for us to actually truly take advantage of these new farm plots, we're gonna need a hoe. And I mean, who doesn't? Well, again, Wormwood doesn't, as not only can they still plant seeds anywhere they wish, they don't actually need tilled spots on these new farm plots to actually plant seeds like the rest of our characters. But if any of you have ever played the Gorge event, then this process should be very familiar to you. But chances are, you'll need to clear some space to even begin doing this. For you see, each rigamajig can form 4 plots total. And so far, I've had at least 2 of these garden detrituses in each upon initial creation of said plots. And as far as I can tell, they serve no other purpose beyond being a nuisance and thus taking up space. So be sure to dig them up to fully remove them. And chances are, you'll even get basic minerals like rocks or flint, basic resources like grass and twigs, but there's a possibility to even dig up gold from these things. Not bad. Now what could be bad is not taking care of our crops. That is, if we want the best outcome for them all. Because here's the thing, folks, and this is important to hear. You could just plant a crap ton of seeds, do absolutely nothing else to the farm plots apart from clearing weeds, return in roughly 4 to 5 days, and then just gather your fully grown crops all the same as we once did before this update. Seriously, there is actually no difference beyond being able to have more crops per plot, of course. But if you really want to be a master farmer now and even grow huge crops, you're gonna need a gardener hat here. For you see, we are now able to research each and every crop in the game from a mere seed to its fully grown ginormous variants. We can even research all sorts of different fertilizers that are now a thing as well. But we're gonna get to that. And the actual process of all this research is quite simple. Just locate a stage and or fertilizer that has yet to be researched, and the game will just tell you that you can indeed research it, just as long as you're wearing the gardener. A simple click will then add the growth stage to this companion menu we can now access by clicking on the hat while we're wearing it, and the more you research, the more information you will gain on the plant. From favorite seasons of growth, how much water they're actually going to need to be satisfied, what nutrients they not only need, but also produce, and much more. Oh yes, folks, it's a whole thing now. And if we're really getting into this thing, the Premier Gardener hat is certainly the next step in the process. Yes, folks, ×2. If we truly wish to do the best we can do with our crops nowadays, an ancient crafting recipe now stands in our way. As the Premier Gardener here allows for us to see what nutrients each and every plant is producing, as well as if certain parts of our plots are actually lacking in specific types of nutrients too. We can actually see these symbols without the hat. However, I just think it's more nonsense than actual sense without the hat. But that's just how I feel. But now, I can also feel a lot of people checking out now due to how nonsensical things are beginning to sound here. But hear me out. It is not that bad. Every plant in the game now has a nutrient cycle in which they both consume various nutrients and produce them, and the onion plant here is gonna be our example. As we understand it, down arrows indicate consumption, while up arrows means productions. Fair enough. So onion plants here will significantly consume manure-based nutrients while producing a good number of what's called growth formula. And don't worry, we're gonna get to that. And the middle bit is compost, which for now doesn't also concern us mostly because it's not entirely implemented yet. However, compost is still a value under the fertilization category, along with a whole mess of things like rot, spoiled fish, rotten eggs, glomer goop, some of wormwood specific crafts, guano, manure, this growth formula stuff, which we'll talk about later, you name it. And fertilizers here can be summed up like this. If the plants in your plots are not functioning well together, or some are just merely missing certain levels of nutrients, specific fertilizers can help fix and or boost that. That said, we can't just go throwing down fertilizers in hopes of them helping each and every plant. You're going to have to read up and learn about the best combinations of it all. Cause here's the deal, folks. The more we get into this, the more it becomes clear that we'll be needing to know the ins and outs to produce the best crops that we can. And not only that, know how some crops can actually feed off one another to become self-sustaining. Take onions and peppers here. Both don't mind being grown in autumn, and they essentially have the perfectly opposite nutrient cycles. Onions consume 3 levels of manure, while peppers produce 3 levels of it. While onions produce 3 levels of growth formula, while peppers consume it. Meaning, if we fill a plot with an even or close to even amount of each and attend to them accordingly, the work could potentially lead to any one of our crops, or heck, even multiple of them, ending its final stage of growth as a giant version of itself. Now, in video form, I'm sure it sounds rather straightforward, but trust me, you'll be doing a lot of research and planning and work to have this be the potential outcome. However, these giant crops we mentioned, what is their deal? Well, they're essentially just normal crops with spoilage timers and all. But they're so big to the point that we'll be needing to carry them like the suspicious marble pieces we can find. They're all great looking and do have quite the spoilage timers actually. So I'm guessing folk will actually choose to decorate with them. Or, they'll actually choose the more sensible option of hammering these huge crops to make working towards them actually worth it in the end. For you see, folks, picking crops at their full stage still only result in but a single product. Maybe a seed for the specific crop too, but you'll need to have kept them happy for that even. But big crops, on the other hand, can drop up to 3 things of produce and 3 specific seeds. So the choice is yours. Farm as you once did, because yes, the option is still 100% there technically, or become a master farmer for huge yields. But hold up, Beard. All this talk and we still haven't even discussed how to actually tend to and maintain crops in the first place. Fair point, friend. But really, keeping plants happy is the easy part. Wormwood players can actually learn what ails them without a gardener hat. However, inspecting the happiness of a plant can let us know if said plant is growing in the right season, if the plant needs water, if it's missing family, which would mean that it would like to be closer to other of its kind, mind you, if it's a weed, or if it's lacking nutrients. And tending to them once per growth stage is actually how one keeps the happiness of a plant up, at least in rudimentary terms. That, or playing music near them, as playing a pan flute, a buffalo horn, a one-man band even, or just anything of the sort, near untended plants will actually tend to them all for you, instead of you having to do so individually. Very nice. So okay then, happiness kinda covered there. How do we satisfy a plant's thirst then? Well, with a watering can, of course. Craft one, fill one up at any pond you can find, and it's one of those one-click and done sort of deals, which is nice. Return to your plots, and then just make it rain. We can see how wet individual plots actually are through visual indications of wet blotches on them, and even though specific plants do have lists of water consumption levels, I don't actually think that drowning plants is a thing, otherwise spring would be meaningless, so I think you can just water away. At least for now. Oh, and cheekily, the Melbatross has a new drop, folks, and it drops another blueprint for the waterfowl can. And in short, it's just a normal watering can with far, far more uses than a normal one. At least, that's all that I've seen from all my fowl testing. But you know what else is foul? At least as foul as you let it become? Growth formula starter here. This stuff is what we saw in the fertilization menu much earlier in this video. However, when you research it, you might find that you only get one entry for it. And that's because, as the formula spoils over time, everyone, it becomes a super growth formula and then a fully fermented version. So make note there. And while we're at it, I guess we may as well cover the composting bin. Craft one from under the new looking food tab, mind you. Place it down and add organic material to it and then give it a spin. And what's supposed to be produced after that, and thus retrieved, is compost. Straight and simple. Clay has said, though, that it is not fully implemented as of yet, so don't worry if your composting bins are kinda giving you grief here. But here is something else not yet implemented in their minds, however it certainly feels darn near it to me: the Lord of the Fruit Flies. This new pseudo mini-boss of sorts seemingly spawns from rotted plants if enough rotted plants are also near healthy ones. So, these new bosses are essentially our punishment for not taking care of our crops, and lead to some interesting, much smaller mechanics. The tiny fruit flies that the Lord spawns don't seem to attack us actually, however that may change come full release. And the Lord itself boasts 4,000 health and 40 damage a bite, so be mindful there. But following a Lord's death, it will drop a leafy meat and potentially something called the Friendly Fruit Fly Fruit. This is essentially an eye bone for Chester or Star Sky for Hutch, as picking it up will have a friendly fruit fly come to your side. And these guys will tend to our crops automatically, which is obviously quite useful. But note that these mini flies that the Lord spawns itself do the exact opposite, so I'd be sure to kill them as soon as you can. But folks, let's wrap up here. The produce scale is very much like the fish scale we got oh so long ago, in that we can place all sorts of crops, both big and small, atop of it to have the game share their weight with us and our friends. Small crops seemingly vanish into the ether, but huge ones can be kept as trophies like this if you wish. Feeding birds within a cage any veggies or fruit will now no longer be a random outcome of sorts. Instead, you feed a bird one crop and you get one crop seed back. Period. Everyone, the egg loop is gone. No more cooking near spoiled eggs and then feeding cooked ones to a bird for fresh eggs themselves. Yikes. Although, monster meat can now be eaten raw by birds, so there's that. Oh, and here's this. The update also kinda sorta nerfs Wickerbottom, everyone. For one thing, her applied horticulture is now slightly more expensive. For another, it now only impacts the growth of 10 plants on screen, and while we could just read it multiple times to accomplish what we have done in the past, the issue is that these 10 plants are randomized, so there will be no guarantee that what you actually want to grow will actually be grown. So yes, that does need a tweak. And apparently, Clay also agreed that disease needed a tweak too. However, instead of just giving us a cure or something like that, they just straight up removed it from the game, everyone. Yup, disease is gone. And there you have it, everyone. Reap what you sow. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this update as of yet. So much so that I'm not really going to leave you with any opinions. I'm just going to see what everyone else is thinking about it over the next several days here. There are some other tweaks and changes that I didn't mention, but you can read all of that for yourself down below. Thanks for watching, folks. Well wishes to all. Good luck in this new world, and I'll see ya in the next one. Bye bye.